Hey, we've been doing these segments called Impression of the Sessions. Please welcome on the program, we have State Representative Spencer Hawks on the line. Spencer, how are you this morning, sir?
Hey, Paul. Thank you very much for having me on. Doing well here. First, I want to lead off with a comment. As everybody well knows, that Faulkner County and Perry County partly underwater here in my district, and we had some issues with the levee last night. So I'm waiting on some updates for that.
Yeah.
I don't have what has happened through the night yet, but I am waiting on those. But please, for all your listeners, be in prayer for the folks in this area and all across the state. This has been a devastating past few weeks, and and I know you got some good prayerful listeners on your station as well, and I would just really covet those prayers at this time.
Absolutely. Yeah, we just don't understand. A lot of people think something like this will never happen to me, but I mean, when it happens, it's unreal, and people's lives are uprooted when they lose their homes, and that's what people are facing here, homes and property and everything else. So I totally agree, and so please be in prayer, folks, for all of Arkansas and our fellow Arkansans who are in the path of this water. Spencer, kind of the way these work is I just kind of give you the floor, and then maybe we get to specifics later. So State Representative Spencer Hawks, what was your impression of the session 2019?
Well, of course, coming in as a freshman, I want to say, I think it was a fairly strong first session personally. I came in, I was the co-chair of the freshman caucus. Of course, they had a Democrat, and then they elected me as the Republican chair of that. And what that amounted to really was not only did I have to learn the process of filing bills and BLR, but I had to communicate that to my colleagues, and we scheduled folks to come in, from different departments and agencies to come in and talk to us and to basically say, this is what we're doing, this is what we're working on, and give everybody a general lay of the land. So that was one thing I was able to do, and I was glad to help some folks out there. I was also elected a deputy whip for the party, and so I worked with Brant Smith on that, and he was our party whip, and he did a phenomenal job. It was wonderful working with him there. He and I were together yesterday at a legislative audit education committee, and we developed a strong relationship, and so that was great. And then I passed 9 pieces of legislation that really made a difference. So I mean, as far as the session, those 3 points, I think that makes up for a pretty strong session there.
As a freshman, did you get the sense that you can't trust some of the bureaucrats? I mean, you have to do your due diligence to make sure they're telling the truth. And I know that's a broad brush, but you know what I mean. I mean, we hear a lot about people who really need to get their bearings on who they can trust and who they can't trust when it comes to asking questions of those who are unelected government officials.
I would just tell folks, if they're coming in at this point, check your facts. When somebody tells you something, may or may not be true, but it may be somebody's version of the truth, and kind of they're representing somebody. It's their agency, it's their client, it's their district, it's their fill out the facts. And I think that everybody that I've dealt with down there, and there are certain situations that I was in, and I look back and I think, yeah, that was a little bit different. I had a piece of legislation and had somebody work with me on it, and I got it back from BLR, and it was completely different than what I thought it should have been. And I checked with them, and they said, well, this is what we were told it needed to be. And I said, no, let's scratch that and go back with my initial plan, changed it a little bit. And so, people down there, you just double check, what you get. And actually, it was funny because I worked with Boise State last week, and I was talking to a BLR staffer, and I brought up that situation that I just alluded to. And she said, it is crazy how often that does happen, that, bills change, and a lot of times the sponsors don't know it or they don't pick up on it till a little bit later. And so let that be noted that I do read the bills. Yeah, you can rest easy. Spencer Hawks reads the bills. Check your facts, and that's business, that's life, and that's legislation.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about tax policy for a second. So we had a lot of tax bills. One good one was standalone $95 million tax cut for top earners, bringing the rate eventually over the next couple of years from 6.9 to 5.9. So that's good, makes us more competitive. On the other hand, though, you had a lot of revenue takebacks from that point forward. You had the gas tax increase, which was going to translate to 3 cents and 6 cents at the pump, gas and diesel. Then you had a referral sending back to the voters something that's supposed to sunset, a tax that's supposed to sunset. That would essentially be a lot more money coming out of the people's pockets. And then the internet sales tax, which I understand had the corporate tax reform. That's the only way I think it was going to pass. But I guess my question is, I've seen the DFNA numbers, and a lot of other legislators have said this. But do you think the amount of money the people are giving to the government is going to increase?
And I want to answer that question. I am going to give you a straight answer on it. But I do want to make this point that as Arkansas becomes more lean in its budget, and I believe it has about every session, under Republican leadership, one way or the other, the question that we really need to start asking when we get finished with the session is, are we leaving the session with a tax policy that lines up better with conservative ideals than what we had before? And I think that if you look at the session, there were some tax increases in places, and like you said, we had a great tax cut. And so as we look at these revenues, we got to think, are we penalizing income net earners? No, we're not. Are we getting it from usage? Yeah, we are. That's where we're developing some of our tax base from. And so we're looking at that. As far as this session goes, I think some of the revenues raised, for like 911, there's some fees there.
Yep.
Coming from a county position. Those are important. I mean, look at the situation we're in now in Arkansas. I mean, we have a need for strong 911 systems. The roads, was that a perfect highway bill? Not at all. Are there things that we're going to have to come back and do later? Definitely. But, as far as what I think Arkansans are going to walk away with, long term, I think they will see more money in their pockets. Short term, I think it's kind of a net neutral situation. But I think the question that we need to be asking ourselves, because in any situation, the state is going to need revenue to operate. And we've just got to say, are we being conservative in how we are generating those revenues? Are we penalizing income earners? Or are we using, and of course I'm being kind of frank with my philosophy there on how that should happen. But, I feel positive about it. It was a hard session for a conservative to come into when you had needs that had been kicked down the road for so long.
You're talking about on the highways?
Highway and 911 primarily, yeah. I mean, those are needs that we have had for a long time. And again, were they perfect bills? Not at all. But if we wait for a perfect bill, then our roads will deteriorate. 911 won't get taken care of. And I mean, there are some real issues with 911. So, I stand by. I voted for both those, and I stand by those votes. But as far as where we are at, I think that it's neutral, but in the long term, Arkansans will see a positive, in their pocketbook.
So neutral. So you're saying, like, right now in the short term, no one would be paying any more money. That's what your contention is after all of this.
I mean, I think that'd be a fair assessment. Could it be a little more for some? Could it be a little less for others? Yes, but I think over the next couple years, Arkansans will really see the benefit of that.
Well, I mean, let me say there's no question that bringing the rate, this is my opinion, Spencer. No question bringing the rate down from 6.9 to 5.9. That's not going to materialize for a few years, but that's good, right? Okay, that's a better structure. But what I was focusing on, really ever since this time last year, I was asking, okay, what about the tax burden? What's the overall tax burden? Well, the only way I see that as, X is, how much money are the people giving to the government? Generally speaking, this much money going to the government, versus if you're going to give a tax cut, the definition of that is a decrease in the amount of money that's going to the government. And, if I look here at the DFNA's own numbers, for example, fiscal year 2020, you're looking at $43 million more from the people to the government because of the internet sales tax. Then you got that cigarette paper tax, that's $720,000. A gas tax increase would be $57 million. You do have a $25 million cut in 2020 with those income tax cuts. But then you get to the homestead and the homestead property tax credit, which is another cut, $12.5 million. But then you get another increase, cell phone fees. That was for the 911. $10 million more from the people to the government. Then a water fee bill, another $1 million. I mean, that is a net tax increase in fiscal year 2020 of $75 million. Going from the people to the government. And so, that's my metric is,
Sure.
Go ahead.
And I definitely understand where you're coming from, and I think that with conversations with other legislators, we're not done with tax reform. There is still so much to do with that. I think that the revenues actually that you're quoting from the internet sales tax, I think that those may come in higher, and that's money that I think we need to come back next session and say, if it does come in higher, which I believe it will, how are we going to put that back in the people's pockets? But everybody, I was talking to Austin McCollum about this, and man, he's a great, solid conservative, and I know that you guys know that better than I do, but everybody likes to talk about tax cuts.
Yeah.
And of course, but here's the thing, we've got to start talking about spending cuts.
Yes.
I mean, that's where it is. And, as I went through the session, there's only so much you can do. And, of course, the way that Arkansas is set up, you come in, and then it's like fire hydrant, and you just is open, and you just get it all at once. But then after you sit down and you look through everything, and you say, oh, wow, look, there's some millions of dollars over here that aren't even being used. Mm-hmm. And, and what are we doing with this? There's money lying around, and, instead of legislators looking at it and saying, that's going to be my honeypot, we need to say, this is money that we need to cut back on.
Yeah. I agree.
And I think that's one thing that I'm looking forward to do here in the interim. They've got me, on legislative audit, and, I'm being able to pay attention to some things. I'll be down there today. And, again, I think that a lot of what we did this past session were necessary. Do I like, raising taxes? No. I mean, I've paid my fair share of taxes, but what we did this session were necessaries to do. And I do think, as far as, again, the policy with what we've set forth as far as the corporate businesses coming in, being more tax advantageous for them, I think that Arkansas is going to benefit from what we did this session, and you will see those increased revenues. But there's still so much work to do, Paul.
There certainly is, and Spencer Hawks, I appreciate you coming on. And I think this was your first time on. I'd love to do it again sometime, and I appreciate you spending some time with us this morning, especially at 6:30 in the morning. So I know that.
Hey, any time, Paul. It was a pleasure, and again, I do want to put out there, be praying for the folks here in Perry and Faulkner County and all across the state as we continue to deal with this flood. And Paul, thank you for what you do for the state of Arkansas and broadcasting conservative principles. I really do appreciate that.
Hey, thank you for that, Spencer. And absolutely, we will pray for everybody in the path of that water. So be safe, sir. Have a good weekend.
Okay, thanks, sir.
All righty.